move to the Reds, Skinny. Huge news broke over the weekend, and obviously it's been continuing into this week as they introduced their new manager. Terry Francona is going to be with the Reds. We've talked so much about we don't know how much the manager really matters in baseball, right? Like, does it matter if they get rid of David Bell or not? Who knows? The manager doesn't really matter. How much does this manager matter?
I think a lot, because what was the one thing that we heard that kind of led to David Bell's demise? The lack of accountability, right? Well, this guy's got cachet where he can hold you accountable, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. I mean, he can just show them his World Series rings. And I think he's one of those managers. I think he's the guy that knows when to put a foot up your ass and knows when to pat you on the back. He just seems like he has that perfect personality to do those kind of things. And so, yeah, I do think it matters. The other thing, Rick, and I could be wrong in this, and I'm probably reading too much into this. He was the one that was interested in this job. He's the one that approached them about, wanting this job. And I can't imagine he didn't get some assurances from management that they weren't going to help fix the roster a little bit, right? I can't imagine he takes this job without some assurance that, hey, we're going to add a couple of pieces here. And we got, and probably he looked at it too and goes, well, if McLean can come back and I got Ellie and I've got a nice little nucleus, and if they're in a nice nucleus of young pitching, if they are going to add to that mix, then we're not far away from being a playoff team. And I know what it takes to get a team to the playoffs. And so I think it's a perfect mix.
Let me play devil's advocate on that point, because I think a lot of people are saying the same thing you are, of like, if he's coming back, this is a guy who won 2 World Series titles. He was the AL Manager of the Year 3 times during the last decade with the Guardians. I mean, he's been at the top of his game. He got out of it because of health reasons, and he said he wasn't able to communicate with the guy. He wasn't managing the way he wanted to, in part because of those health reasons. Everyone's saying if they were able to get this guy back out of retirement, they had to have made him some type of assurances to what they're going to do with this roster to improve it, right?
Yep.
I get that. He says, he was asked a question along those lines. He said, absolutely not. We didn't even discuss it. And you're never going to hear me talk about payroll and roster decisions. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But there is part of me that wonders, is this a guy that just can't stay away? Is he just, he's past his prime. It really was the end for him with the Guardians. He probably shouldn't be managing now. He's not in the best health. Maybe he's not relating to today's players as well. And yet, the Reds came to him. He sees an Ellie De La Cruz. He sees a Hunter Green. He's like, I just can't not say yes to that. I've got to go manage.
Yeah, maybe. I will say this. I mean, he did have health issues. Those are apparently behind him. I didn't realize he's had like 22 surgeries in his life.
I heard 40 the other day. I was like, what's
maybe it is. I thought it was 20.
What would you have 40 surgeries on?
Somebody sent me.
Just kill me. I'm done by that point.
Hang on. If I can find it, I got a text from a friend of mine that was really interesting. He laid out all the surgeries that he had, and I'm like, whoa, hang on. I see if I can find this.
I assume this is like has to be multiple surgeries on the same thing to get it right or something. Like, I just don't think I would agree to 40.
He didn't send me all of them, but here's some of them of recent vintage. In 2017, he had cardiac aplasia, which a friend of mine had and had to have surgery. 2020, he had intestinal issues from surgery and blood clots. Had his hip replaced in 21. Had a staph infection in his toe in 21. In 2022, he had a shoulder reconstruction and double hernia. And so, hopefully since those 2022 surgeries, he's had nothing but good health and feels rejuvenated to come back and manage.
And he very well might. Look, a big part of me and most of my feeling on this is the Reds did the best possible thing they could have in this situation. There was almost nothing they could have done with the manager that would have made me say, great job. You've done all you can do. This seems like you're moving in the right direction. They went out and did that. So just from a standpoint of looking like they take this seriously, they do have some type of plan and they're trying to improve and make this thing better. They get an A+ in that regard. Yep. But there are parts of me that are still a little worried about it's not, I mean, you need more than just a manager. Even a really good manager isn't going to be enough to turn this team around. I am worried about their plan in place and what they're going to do to move forward. But I mean, you got to give it definitely gives Nick Krall some credibility back that he has some idea of what he's doing. And at least Terry Francona believes in what he's doing.
Well, I will say this then, if the Reds don't do something this offseason of significance to improve the roster, then all fingers have to point to Nick Krall if things go haywire. That's the thing. You brought in a guy with credibility. David Bell didn't have much credibility because David Bell had not managed before, other than his last name. And again, I get that. I mean, you got to see a guy do it before you can believe in him, and he never really did it. So it was hard to really believe in him or give him a pass, or have him built up any equity. He built up none. This guy's got a lot. He's got a lot, of cachet behind him. And so if things go haywire, I don't think it will be pointed at him. It'll be pointed at Nick Kroll and management of not doing anything. And I just don't see them bringing a guy in like this and then going, yeah, we're good. I just don't see that.
Yeah, I think that's probably right, more so than not. I mean, it just the whole accountability thing is interesting to me because when I hear that, I often think of like, look, if your team needs to be held accountable, you've got losers in your locker room to begin with.
Agreed.
Like,
No,
you're grown men, you're professional. But in the case of David Bell, I did think it was a bit weird that each of the last 2 seasons, we had articles being written about Luke Maley needing to give impassioned speeches to this team when they were down and needed it most. It's like, that seems like something's going on there with a lack of respect for the manager.
I think the accountability also would come in, and I'm going to point it at Ellie, for example. It's hard not to write Ellie's name on the lineup card each and every day, because he was your best player overall, period. He played an important position at shortstop. You really didn't have, other than Santiago Espinal, a day to give him off. They rarely gave him any days off. But he made enough base running blunders that at some point you go, I got to sit you down for a bit here, my guy, and we're gonna have to stop doing some of these things. I like your aggressiveness. I like a lot of things you do, and maybe that's part of it. And not just that, of other guys making base running blunders, and it just feels like it feels like it's not a matter of him having a clubhouse of renegades, more so of when guys don't play the game the right way, they're rewarded with their name being in the lineup card again the next day. And maybe that was by default because you had nothing better or nothing else you could put in that lineup. But maybe at some point you got to say, no, I got to sit you down for a day for this reason.
Yeah, he used that exact phrase like 30 or so times during his press conference, play the right way. I mean, he kept referencing that. Francona did. So that's definitely the message he's trying to send, that they're going to play a different way. I also think it is funny that I'm hearing everyone talk about like, oh, David Bell didn't hold these guys accountable. They didn't play the right way. And then the only example anyone really uses is the base running. Everyone's like, oh, they ran into too many outs. It's like, okay. I mean, I guess that's the whole reason they're going to be a different team and they need a new manager. But yeah.
Well, or maybe situational hitting, when you have the contact play on, instead of, maybe look to lift one to the outfield. It's easier said than done, but guys go through that in their pregame hitting routine of, okay, here I am, guy on third, 1 out. I got to get one to the outfield. And, again, it's batting practice speed versus game speed and all those things, but that you do work on situational hitting. They were terrible at that, Rick. They were like always when they needed to get even a run scored with an out, they couldn't make the proper out, for goodness sakes, let alone get the hit.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying that there aren't other legitimate reasons or things that should be pointed out. I've just found it funny over the last 2 weeks. I've heard so much about the Reds base running. It's like the thing that everyone is bringing up. Yeah. So if nothing else, I expect the base running to be sharper going forward.
Shock of shocks that the 3 hitting coaches, I didn't even know they had 3. I knew they had a bunch of assistants. The 3 hitting coaches got let go. There's a shock of shocks.
Have you ever heard the term too many cooks in the kitchen?
No doubt.
You think that might be the problem there? I mean, what's going on with that?
You got my one guy who was in charge of what was it, analytics. What are you crunching there that, hey, if you swing at a ball, hey, Will Benson, if you swing and miss at another ball straight down the middle, start swinging at balls low and in, because you can't hit anything thrown straight down the middle for some reason. I mean, what does that guy do?
That guy was in charge of the little knob that went on Ellie's bat that he would always get in trouble for, where the other team would be like, hey, that's illegal. And he'd be like, no, it's measuring swing speed or something.
Good Lord almighty.
You can always find our stories here on YouTube, but go ahead and tap subscribe. That way you're always in the know.